It's been almost a decade since the efforts of a determined group of nonprofit watchdogs led by Democracy North Carolina Executive Director Bob Hall helped expose the corruption of former North Carolina House Speaker Jim Black. And in addition to helping to drive Black from office, those efforts helped spur a number of improvements to state laws governing campaign finance, gifts to public officials, lobbying disclosures, and many other important areas of government. Now, however, corruption has reared its ugly head again, and there are real questions as to whether the existing structure for enforcing state campaign finance laws can respond adequately to the challenge. As detailed in a letter that Bob Hall delivered to federal and state prosecutors earlier this month. Is that going to be one of our visuals today? Several of North Carolina's most important political leaders, you can see their faces over here, were the recipients of large and potentially illegal campaign contributions from individuals affiliated with the controversial Sweepstakes industry in 2011 and 12. Strangely and surprisingly, however, officials at the State Board of Elections chose not to follow up on Bob's findings, and now Bob and his colleagues are appealing to the U.S. Attorney and the Wake County District Attorney to take a second look. Today, Bob will explain his findings, what Democracy North Carolina is asking prosecutors to do, and really the overall state of political corruption in North Carolina politics today. I know that Bob Hall needs very little introduction to most of you. He's a friend and confidant and colleague to almost all of us, but for those of you who maybe forgotten some of this stuff, Bob has been working with grassroots groups across the South for the last 45 years. He's collaborated on a variety of economic and social justice projects. He's served on numerous nonprofit boards and governmental commissions, provided expert testimony in court cases, consulted with officials in a dozen states on voting rights and campaign finance reform. He's the founding editor of Southern Exposure, the magazine of the Institute for Southern Studies, where he worked for 25 years. And his honors include the MacArthur Fellow Award, NC Press Association's First Amendment Award, NCAARP's Advocacy Friend of the Year Award, and the NAACP's Political Trailblazer Award. He also has a master's from Columbia University, and he's, of course, the North Carolina Treasurer. We're honored to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Bob Hall.
So we'll see. Is this? Thank you very much, Rob. Is that noisy enough? Loud enough?
I'll work the computer if you need help.
Yes. So, yes, I want to talk a little bit about sweepstakes and video poker and corruption. And I want to put out, I guess, to begin with, just the number of $10 million. $10 million is what the Board of Elections found was the amount of money that Chase Burns, the man behind the IIT company, the Internet International Technologies company that was the target of this thing. $10 million is what he spent on in North Carolina on lawyers and lobbyists. $10 million to make his industry legal in a very short period of time. That was coming from a 3% surcharge on the mom and pop cafes that he serviced with his software, which is to say, what is that? 10%? $10 million is 3% of about over $300 million. $300 million. This is just one of a number of operations that are still working in North Carolina, even though it's illegal. They continue to find new ways to operate these games. What the Chase Burns, who was the subject of the main part of our complaint, what he furnished to these operations was software. He didn't put in or didn't build the machines, and these were not the old-fashioned video poker consoles that kind of look like an ATM machine and you press buttons and you hope the rabbits would all show up in rows. Now these are all at computer terminals, and it's rigged to be, you buy internet time, and you can press a button, you can get the winners will be revealed to you whether you play the game very hard or not, very long. There are multiple ways that they kind of got around having a game that is full of flashing lights, except it is still full of flashing lights, and you still pay money. but you actually get money in return if you win in the new iteration that they had. So he from Oklahoma, which is where he's based, was supplying the software to all these different companies around North Carolina and in Florida and in Ohio and all across the country. It was a growing business. He's just one of 2 or 3 big operations in North Carolina. There's another one, VS2, that is video software worldwide, something or other that stands for VS2. Like Burns's company, IIT, VS2 hired lobbyists in North Carolina. And they also were busted in another state for illegal gambling operations. There's another one called Frontier Software Systems. And it also goes by Frontier Communications and about 5 other names. They also provide the software to all these little mom and pop stores. So there are 3 different ones, at least in North Carolina. So Burns is just the one, that's $300 million. There's all these ones out here, and at the time they were talking about, that they could help. If you legalize us, which is one of the things they were trying to do, if you legalize us, General Assembly and Governor McCrory, we'll put $500 million into the state treasury because we want you to regulate us and we want you to tax us and let us be legitimate. And they wouldn't do that because they knew that in the end, this is a very corrupt industry. It's full of cash operators, and there's just a tremendous amount of relationship between the people in this industry and organized crime of one kind or another. So many of them have been busted in one way or another with organized crime activity. So, and it goes back to, it is a decade ago that we got involved with the video poker and Jim Black. And I'll tell you that came about from just looking at, as I do, looking at campaign reports, all over and over again. And with the Jim Black, this is the 2002 election cycle, there were all these odd contributions of $1,000 from people who had never given before, from places far away from where Jim Black is from, Charlotte. These are from Laurinburg and people along the border of South Carolina, and they're listed as textile worker, $1,000, or a convenience store clerk, $1,000. Give me a break. They've never given before. So I started calling some of these people up, and they would tell, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any. I never gave you Jim. Who is that? And I would probe a little bit, and it turned out that their uncle would own a sweepstakes cafe in the next town, or they were the sister of somebody who owned a sweepstakes operation, or they were across the street from somebody who had one. These were all straw donors. They were phony donors. Names and addresses had been put in by people, and it all traced back over about $100,000 that went into the Jim Black campaign. That all got traced back to a guy named Bobby Huckabee, who was the Chase Burns of the 2000 cycle. And he did have the video terminals. He had the old-fashioned system. And, they were trying to legalize the industry back then. So that all, it was based on that complaint we filed that then the Board of Elections, with very clear evidence of small donors, and I had these people on tape telling me this stuff because I also tried to get reporters to go back and talk to them. And they would, by that time, they'd changed their story. I mean, we had Bobby Huckabee's sister was one of those who had given but she had no idea what it was. But by the time the reporter got back to her, she knew exactly why she gave to Jim Black and how much money it was and everything. And anyway, when they got the bank accounts of Jim Black, one thing led to another. The blank checks from the optometrist and money, all kinds of things. And I think that if they do a similar investigation with this, lots more things will be popping up. This is what got me involved with the Chase Burns was an AP story about Chase Burns being arrested in Florida. And they put in there that he was a major donor in North Carolina. I think they identified a couple $100,000 that he had given to legislators, so he had in Florida, he had this massive system. Again, it was where he was providing software. In Florida, it's legal to operate video parlors if the proceeds or a major portion of them go to charity. Well, they got a veterans group to be a trumped up front group for them, for this whole network all over the state of video parlors. And they gave them a couple percentage points of money. But there was, again, and that was $300 million in that state in that 1 year when they investigated. And it turned out there was money laundering and racketeering and all kinds of charges. They eventually, and the state lieutenant governor at that time in 2013 resigned because she had, her PR firm had represented the industry, and she bailed out real quick, did not want to become the focus of the scrutiny. If you're an elected political figure, you will be the front target of any federal investigation. That's the scalp they really want to put on the belt, is an elected political official, not the industry, not the major donor. We, on the other hand, we're equal opportunity. we think it's important to get the source of the money and hold them accountable as well. So this AP story came out in March of 2013. I started looking at all the contributions, and not just the ones that are online. And, you know, where our Board of Elections is, we're antiquated. Campaign reports are filed by paper by the majority of campaigns. We actually, probably with a lot of your help, we finally got a law passed last year that will require them in 2017, beginning 2017, to file campaign reports online, electronically. And some of them do that voluntarily now. The state level people have to do it as a requirement, and the state parties, and some PACs that give to state level, you know, but a lot of them are not. So looking on the electronic database of all the money that's coming in, that's filed electronically, you can see Chase Burns in a lot of these reports. But then there were a lot more that I went through, you know, with others, that paper by paper by paper report, and found, you know, tens of thousands of additional dollars. The thing that was very interesting was the way these contributions were identified. They weren't Chase Burns, CEO, IIT Corporation, Oklahoma. They were Chase Burns Trust, or Chase Burns, or Charles Burns, or Chase Burns, and then there was an address for Moore and Van Allen law firm in Morrisville. They have their lobby operation is based in Morrisville. Moore and Van Allen is a law firm and a lobby firm combined, and so they have this office there. Lobbyists mostly come out of that office. And some of them would say care of Tommy Severe or on the contributions, or they would list Chase Burns as a lawyer with Moore and Van Allen. There were several of them like this. Well, this is pretty odd. What is going on here? So, you know, it turns out that in the end, what turned out was that Moore and Van Allen delivered all these checks to dozens and dozens of legislators. And we'll get to the list of them. There's over 90 legislators and a couple of the state level officials, Pat McCrory. But it was, you know, they just swigged through the legislature. He did, Chase Burns, with his money. And so that led me to, you know, file who was behind these checks, who's actually writing the checks. When you looked at the checks, actually, and eventually the Board of Elections, you know, we filed this complaint, the Board of Elections started collecting the checks, copies of the checks that the campaigns had. There was different handwriting on the different checks, which is another, you know, shades of Jim Black, where who's writing these checks? Is Chase Burns just giving a bunch of blank checks to the lobbyist, and then the lobbyist is just deciding who to give money to? Well, in the end, it turned out that it was a company. It was one of Chase Burns' administrative assistants who wrote a lot of these checks, and his wife wrote a lot of his checks, and another assistant wrote a lot of the checks, and Chase Burns wrote some of the checks. There was a lot of checks. So, and it turned out to be over, about $275,000 in all to these folks. So, and let me just now I'm gonna
Go to a different document?
no, I'm gonna
Scroll down.
scroll down. What page? Here you see some of these. So this is they got the bank account. The Board of Elections finally got the bank account of Chase Burns. It took a while, but they finally got of this one account that was writing the checks, the source of the checks. It was called the Chase Burns Trustee. Chase Burns Trustee for the Chase Burns Trust. That's the name of the account. And from the very get-go, my sense was this is not a personal account. This is part of a business enterprise that Chase Burns is using as part of his gambling operation. And early on, I did identify, and I told the AP this, and they started writing about it, that the Chase Burns was one of the accounts that was used in Florida to launder all this money that he had there. So it was, and the investigators there did identify the Chase Burns trustee for the Chase Burns account, blah, 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 as integral to what they called a money laundering scheme and a racketeering scheme and so on. So, to me, it was very clear that it was part of his business operation. So this is the account, the Chase Burns trustee account. And so money comes in, the deposits come in, and the payments go out. The ones in red are the political contributions. So early on in 2011, there's a contribution written to Tom Tillis in August of 2011. And then there's one in November of 2011 to Phil Berger, our top two men. So, let's see here. That's just the beginning, though. And then we got, then they give money to the caucus. I'm sorry. So there's money to Phil Berger, and then there's money to the caucus on January 2012, and then in March of 2012, another donation of $12,500 to these Republican Senate caucus. Do you all know what the Republican Senate caucus is?
Explain.
The mafia.
It's a what?
He said the mafia.
The mafia. Well, the Democrat Senate caucus had a similar operation. They have a Democratic House caucus and a Republican House caucus. It started back in the 90s when politics really began intense in North Carolina after the 94 election, when Democrats actually got a setback, and they said, holy baloney, we got to really step it up. And Bass Knight and Tony Rand and so on, they recognized that they've got to pull their money together more and target political money into the hot districts, the swing districts. And they started assessing the members of the caucus money, $2,000 up to whatever. If you want to be the chair of the Appropriations Committee, all right, we'll just, you want a corner office, come on, help us out. If you're not in the majority, you're not going to get any of these perks. So you need to put in. So even good people, the so-called good people, Deborah Ross and Paul Lupke and whoever, they had to be putting money in to the caucus. But more than that, the caucus was actually within the party. So the Republican Senate caucus is a bank account within the Republican Party. The Republican Party can receive unlimited contributions from legal donors. They have to be PACs or persons or other parties. They can't be a corporation in North Carolina, but they can receive a $100,000 check from somebody. And then they could also then give $100,000 out. They can give unlimited to a political candidate. An ordinary individual cannot do that. Nor can the Tom Tillis campaign committee. They can't give $100,000 to Tom Murray if he's in trouble. But they can give $100,000 to the Republican House caucus, and it can give $100,000 to Tom Murray. So the caucuses are a real organizing vehicle for and a way for the leadership to maintain leadership. And they raise a lot of money, and the top folk The Apodakas and the, so on are major players in that operation nowadays. So they put money in, and then they start giving, Pat McCrory's here in August of $4,000. And then there's a spray of money. In September comes all these other contributions to all these other legislators. I don't know if you can read their names, but there's, this is just legislator after legislator after, and in the middle here, there's a few mineral purchases, land purchases that Chase Burns is doing, which is part of this money laundering operation. Actually, he's back up here. You see this deposit of $5 million. This is $5 million coming from IIT. That's his gambling company. So he gets $5 million from that company, puts it in here, and then he starts putting it out into investments all over Oklahoma and all over the country, really. And so
Is that the land company that's listed there, the investments you're saying?
Yeah, that's part of it,
Okay.
right, one of them, right. Land companies, and farms, he's got mineral operations, lots of different things. But he uses some of it, the way the Board of Elections in the end decided that this was a personal bank account. It may have been illegal money. It didn't matter. That's not in their purview. What is in their purview is it a corporate money or is it not corporate money? And they determined it is not. Is it a corporate account that is making these contributions? Is it corporate money? And they determined no, because that bank account, this trust account, was originally set up with a social security number for Chase Burns as a personal bank account. Boom. And that was it. End of story. That was it. So it didn't matter to them that this is actually the activity they have in there. And then, let me see if I can get to page 56, 50, I gotta get to here, all right. 59.
Did you post this online?
This is on the Board of Elections. Well, it's probably a hard place to find. I don't know that I did. Our complaint is online on the homepage. We can post this, make it more easy. So here's to me the smoking gun of how this is a political operation of a corporation, the business enterprise of Chase Burns. So Chase Burns hires Moore and Van Allen. No, it's not Chase Burns that hires him. It's IIT that hires Moore and Van Allen. That's the client, is the corporation. And they write this memo for him. The IIT political campaign contribution strategy. It's not the Chase Burns political contribution strategy. It's the IIT political strategy. And it says, to optimize political contributions during the current election cycle, we recommend the following campaign contribution giving strategy. Legislative candidates in Tier 1 category are the top giving donors, are the top giving targets for this election cycle. These leaders head fundraising efforts for their respective caucuses and will determine what legislation will be considered in 2013. Candidates for governor are also included. And McCrory and, what's his name? How easily we forget. Mr. Dalton are on there, but he didn't give the Dalton. But he did follow this script. 25,000, 15,000, so on. Lee Samuelson at the time was a big fundraiser for the caucus. But now, Chase Burns cannot give $25,000 to Tom Tillis, nor $15,000 or $25,000 to Phil Berger. He's got to organize his people together to do those political donations to add up to the $25,000. And that indeed is what he did. So this is another reason to me why this is, the whole thing is a business enterprise.
And Bob, you can track the X number of people who made up the 15,000?
Yeah,
okay.
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, that is. I could show you on this. Well,
You want to pull up the other ones?
Yeah, we can, so let me summarize it. So a couple of the complaints, one of the major complaints is this whole area about is it corporate money? And that's a state violation, it's not a federal violation. That's a state law that says corporations may not directly or indirectly, and this is the important part, not directly or indirectly make a contribution to a state candidate. So the fact that he uses this intermediary, this trust account, as a vehicle for his corporate strategy, in our view, is a violation of that prohibition. This would have been a slam dunk, I think, under the previous administration, the truth be known. But it was not something that they have done, and I do hope that eventually it will be something that is prosecuted. Another piece of that we talked about is the money laundering, and that's a federal as well as state, but there's federal charges involved in money laundering, and there's also the whole issues about taxes. Did Chase Burns pay taxes on all this money that's flowing through these? And that's part of what got involved in Florida was just the way they use these pancaking of accounts and move the money around so that eventually they're avoiding tax liability. Those are a couple of the big charges that we had. Now with the lobbying, it's not illegal for a lobbyist to hand out a check from one donor to one politician, which is what Warren Van Allen was doing over and over again. It is illegal now. After this stuff has come out in 2013, I guess in 2013 or 2014, they changed the law to say that a lobbyist may not hand a single check to a candidate. But what the law used to say was that they cannot hand multiple checks from multiple different contributors to one politician. And this same guy, Tommy Severe, it turned out he did do that. He confessed as he was being interviewed to, oh yeah, well, there were a couple times where I did do that. I gave a bundle of checks. We were at one of our meetings. Now this is Warren Van Allen. It turns out this is really interesting, very nicely documented in this report, is that these lobby firms hold soirees with candidates. They bring them in for half-an-hour sessions with their various clients. So Pat McCrory comes into a room. The lobbyist is there, and then here comes the insurance company that's their clients, and they sit down with Pat McCrory and they talk for 25 minutes and they tell him what their agenda is and why he needs to support them. And the next thing you know, there's $4,000 in Pat McCrory's bank account, his campaign's bank account, whether he gives it to them then or it's after the fact or it's before the fact. But it's this whole series. And so it was at one of these kind of events, and then they also hold fundraisers, as you can imagine. A room like this full of people and the candidate, and they're swirling around and they're collecting checks. Well, Phil Berger goes out the door and goes to the elevator, and he forgot his money. He forgot to take his bundle of money. So Tommy Severe runs after him with his envelope full of cash and checks and everything. He said, "Oh yes, I did that once." And apparently, he did it also with the Walter Dalton campaign too. And they're not going to slap him on that, but we think they should slap him on that. So that's some of the bundling. The piece that's a whole other track then. So you've got Chase Burns as a major player, and he was the guy who put in the most money. This $270,000, it made him the biggest political donor in North Carolina in the 2012 cycle. And he's from Oklahoma, right? So it's pretty interesting that one guy would put this much money in. But then there were all these other people in the industry who were also putting in as much money as he did when you add it all together. And that's where the bundling issues come up and some of these other meetings. And let me talk about this because I know we're kind of running out of time. Let me think. So Rob, you probably want to get to another. Yeah, sure. Let's get to the.
There you go.
Yeah. So, oops. Come back here.
Sorry about beat it.
Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, this is an example. I don't know, can you, I guess you can read this, can't you?
Yeah.
See? So there's a meeting, one of these meetings where Tom Tillis, this is May of 2012, he meets with a sweepstakes representative and a McGuire Woods lobbyist. So McGuire Woods is another Moore and Van Allen, right? They're a lobby firm and a law firm. They actually have, their lobby firm has a separate LLC, but it's all the same. And this is Harry Kaplan, the lobbyist, Harry Kaplan, who some of you know Harry Kaplan. And the sweepstakes representative is a guy named Gardner Payne, who used to be a lobbyist. And one of his clients was VS2, the parallel to Chase Burner. Well, Gardner Payne got so in I better not, this is all on tape, isn't it? Gardner Payne shifted from being the lobbyist to becoming the owner of his own. He started sweepstakes operations himself, with VS2 being his supplier. He started opening them up around all. I mean, he's got a place he's got some operations in Arkansas. He's all over the place now. But he knows the political system. He was a lobbyist. He knows how it works. So he was the front man for the sweepstakes industry going to these meetings. And McGuire Woods, Harry Kaplan, his client is VS2. It's not Chase Burns, it's VS2. But they were all, something happened around this time, early in 2012, late 2011, that they made a decision that this is our time. This is going to be the time where we can legalize this industry. And they started having these meetings, and something happened in these conversations. Gardner Payne is very clear that he offered to raise money to Tom Tillis when he sat down with him. I will raise you money. Here's what our industry is. Here's why you should legalize it. It would generate buku bucks for the state treasury. And so he meets with him on May the 10th, and on May the 16th, the Tom Tillis campaign records $60,000 from this collection of people, all on the same day. These checks, and they're from all over the state, but mostly in the Triad area, which is a big center for the political operators of this industry. And then in the same day, look at this. There's, whoops.
Scroll down. Sorry.
I'm too old.
You're not holding the mouse right, Bob.
We went to the, you're on.
We're on page 2. Now you gotta go back to page 1.
Sorry, folks.
I
Technology.
do.
You got it.
Boom.
There you go.
All right, there. That's exactly where I want to be. So in addition, on May the 16th, in addition to these people who are sweepstakes parlor owners, some of them own multiple places, and they're given $4,000, $4,000. And here's one, they're splitting it up, right? So they each did 1/3 of $4,000. There's also the pack. These are all clients of McGuire Woods. Their checks are also there. So am I supposed to believe that somehow in the mail there's 16 different checks coming in and 3 pack checks? They all just happen to arrive at the same day? It sure does look like this is a bundle of checks that were all presented at some time to the Tom Tillis campaign. And the lobbyist was not connected to this. That's when it's the Moore and Van Allen. These are their clients. This is pretty hard to believe. So that's one example of several that the Board of Elections actually did uncover in their interviews. And let me see if I can show you another. Here's Pat McCrory. Again, this is early in 2012 now. He's a candidate. He's not our governor. And he works for Moore and Van Allen.
That's convenient.
And he's not a lobbyist. But he's
Or a lawyer.
Or a lawyer. But he recruits clients for Moore and Van Allen, apparently. And he will not say who his clients were that he brought into the firm. he originally said he never met with these sweepstakes people when he was asked, and then he changed the story and said, well, I did meet with them, but I also met with the other side too. Anyway, so February 23rd, there was a meeting with Pat McCrory and Garner Payne and Harry Kaplan, and a week or so later, $34,000 comes into the Pat McCrory campaign from all these people. Many of them are the same as the other list I gave you. And then there's also these 3 PAC checks from McGuire Wood clients. So what's up with this? And look, we even got this man, William George Jr. from Rock Hill, South Carolina. Well, so William George, it turns out, he's a sweepstakes guy. He's got operations in South Carolina. He's got them in North Carolina. He may even have them in Florida. But the AP finally got up with him, and he was fairly talkative, unlike most of these folks. One of his quotes is, if we needed to write a check to Pat McCrory, I wrote a check to Pat McCrory. He says, we didn't give them money because we liked them. We just knew they were powerful people up in Raleigh, and they could get done what we wanted to get done. We give them your money, and you're supposed to get what they say they're going to do. There you go.
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. Yes, that does look like quid pro quo. It does look, something happened in these conversations that made the industry believe that if they gave money, they would get something in return. Now, whether the politician actually delivered, it doesn't matter. In the law, in the federal law, under the Hobbs Act, if the person is giving money with the expectation that they're going to get something in return, that's a federal crime. And we think that needs to be examined by the federal authorities. And we do have these bribery statutes as well in North Carolina. Here's Berger in September of 2012. September is when they made the transition. I mean, they made a decision about September, in August, I guess, really, to kick it up. And that's when they hired additional firms, and Burns got his list of who to give all the money to, and they did some more meetings. They have a meeting here with Phil Berger, same people, Gardner Payne, Harry Kaplan. $26,000 from the sweepstakes donors come into his bank account, and then a bunch of the ones from the McGuire Woods people. Then October, so remember Paul Foley? Paul Foley is the Board of Elections man who finally resigned. Right. He was appointed by McCrory and was one of the team of people. He was the general counsel for the Republican Party at the time he was appointed. He was a member of the firm, of the Kilpatrick Stockton firm in Winston. The Kilpatrick Stockton firm in Winston, I mean, they got operations everywhere, but it was their Winston office that was representing IIT, Chase Burns' company. And they represented them in the litigation to try to go through the courts to establish that this kind of manipulation, this software system, didn't violate state law because it skirted it in different ways. And they got some mixed lower court decisions, district court decisions, went all up. It was at the Supreme Court at the time of the October. The Supreme Court finally in December of 2012 did rule that these kind of sweepstakes games are illegal. And that made it even more important for them to want to get their games legalized, but they knew that they were at risk. So Paul Foley holds a fundraiser along with some other people, other Kilpatrick Stockton folk and others, in October in Winston, October 6th. Well, October the 5th, the day before, here's Chase Burns and his wife giving $4,000 comes into the McCrory account. There's a bunch of money coming in and out, coming in that time. You asked me about how does Chase Burns get like $15,000 or whatever into Pat McCrory's account. Well, here's how he does it. One way he can do it. He gets $4,000 from himself, from his trust account, $4,000 from his wife, $4,000 from Dawn Brown, who's the sweetheart of John Fainin, who is another sweepstakes operator in, he lives in South Carolina, but he was busted in Florida with Chase Burns in the same, he was a part of the Florida operation. And here he is giving in North Carolina. And then Georgette McGuire, another $4,000. So there's $20,000 from those 5 folk that the Chase Burns Enterprises puts into McCrory's account. And then there's all this other money that's coming right around the same time. And I don't know, I don't know whether Paul Foley is, his fundraiser happens to be, a lot of these are right again in the triad area, High Point, Winston, Ashboro, Clemens, Archdale, so on. So, and then there's, later on, the last 2 are Gardner Payne and Sherry Upchurch, who's a part of the VS enterprise. And then some of these are the Kilpatrick Stockton donors, which is another reason why sometimes when you have a fundraiser, all the money gets logged in on the same day. But these are Kilpatrick Stockton lawyers who are at this event, and part of this fundraising event that was held on the 6th. And their checks are logged in over a space of time. So it's plausible that checks that were related to that donation, that fundraiser, could have been logged in over time. It's worth exploring. And so this is kind of the interesting. There's what happened September in 2011. House Speaker Tom Tillis in 2002 to 2008 got $28,000 from the sweepstakes operators. Now this is 2011, and it's just curious that for some reason they think they should bundle up this amount of money and give it over to Tom Tillis. Was there a meeting on that day or shortly before that time? And another kind of intriguing thing to me, Tom Tillis, he did a very similar thing in August of 2010 when the Republicans were trying to win the majority. They were on the outs, and the Democrats were having a hard time. They were not doing great fundraising in 2010. And Tillis was doing a good job of fundraising. He was going all over the place. And somewhere around July, August, he had a meeting with some of the people from the commercial loan industry, the small loan for buying a car, buying furniture, the ones that the military people are so upset about their folk being victims of this industry. And as Rob knows, they've been trying to get interest rates increased in that industry for years, and it had been fought back. All the reports were that they were making plenty of money. But in 2010, they had a sit down with Tom Tillis, and they gave him some money. And the next thing you knew, all kinds of money started flowing from those mom and pop small loan operators to all of the Republican challengers. None of the Democrats got money. They used to divide their money between, most of it would go to the Democrats because the Democrats were in charge. But they abandoned the Democrats in the fall and summer of 2010 and put all their money into the Republicans, over $100,000 in a space of just a couple months. And you can see these checks, clusters of checks from donors, 5 or 6 of the small loan people writing the checks for $500 or $1,000, all of them going to one candidate and then another candidate. Yes, sir.
When this was disclosed, didn't Tillis and the rest of the Republican cabal take that money and donate it to charity?
The Chase Burns money, yes,
Yeah.
They did. They gave his particular money to charities, at least those 3 men. But let me just finish this commercial loan, because it did turn into a big effort in 2011 after the 2010 surge in money. In 2011, the commercial loan industry put on a big lobbying operation, and did push through finally a bill in the House, despite people from the Pentagon, from the Fort Bragg, coming to testify against that increase in rate. And the lobbyists against the rate increases from the Justice Center and the Center for Responsible
Lending.
Responsible Lending, they were surprised because a number of the freshman Republicans, they didn't want to go against the military. The military was saying, don't let them raise these rates. And lo and behold, then they, Paul Stam and Harold Brubaker, who was the head of the banking committee, whatever, one of the big committee, so on, they would come back around and twist their arms. And apparently the word was out that this industry has given us a bunch of money. We need to support this industry. Boom. It was that plain. And some of the Republicans were quite upset about it, but they passed that piece of legislation. And the Senate didn't pass it because they knew that Governor McCrory, who was still governor at that time, said she would veto it. Governor Perdue would veto it, and she would have a bank of military people behind her as she, on the camera, stamped this veto. Anyway, it's just, there's a pattern that is very disturbing about the way money moves. The politicians are, they've got to get the money. They want to get this money. They want to build up their war chest. They want to build up their caucus. And it is the demand that they feel to get the pressure to get this money. They're going to get it anywhere they can get it. And they're going to go as close to the line, or maybe sometimes they might even go across the line. In their mind, they may not think they're going across the line. They may be winking and nodding and knowing that they're not going to actually do something. But, from the perspective of these industries, they get the sense that this is a pay-to-play system. And it is very often these kind of marginal industries are ones that are on the outs, like the poker industry, or the nurse anesthetist, for some reason, somebody told them, hey, the way to be a big player is give a bunch of money. Give me a break, because your own the merits of your own case is not enough. Lobbying is not about information; it's about money. Well, that's not what it's supposed to be about. The political system should be about measuring the merits. What is in the public interest ultimately? And here's who's got the arguments that are saying that. No, the money gets intervened, and so this pay-to-play system begins to dominate, and it's corrupting. These guys ran against the pay-to-play system. Pat McCrory did a big campaign against, I'm cleaning up corruption in Raleigh. Well, to me, it looks like he is deeply embedded into the system. Now, he may say, don't bring me the checks at the meeting. Don't bring me the check. Apparently he did that. He said that. Don't bring me the checks at the meeting. Big deal. That's not exactly what we think is big reform. So our whole system is warped. It gets warped by these moneyed interests. They get protection. They're buying protection, one industry at a time. The Dukes and the big boys, they do it in multiple ways. They do it with goodwill lobbying as well as the contributions. They have these meetings as well and give the money. And then they also have a lot of other ways that they gain their influence through the taxes and their employment and all the charities they support, and they're getting their executives to be volunteer for the United Way and everything else. But the money from industries that want to get involved, they get the message that if you want to be a player, you've got to often hire the right lobbyist, put in the right money, and then you can get a hearing. And to me, that's what has distorted our political system. And it actually warps it in the sense that those at the top are getting protection, those at the bottom are getting screwed. It's really, that's where our system, the major tilt happens right there. You can't get justice when you have the political money defining what's the agenda items. You can't get a criminal justice system that is going to go after these people. That's a hard thing to do. To get them to go after the small guys on the streets, that's an easier thing. They're not putting the money in the system. the criminal justice system gets warped by this. So we want to hold the criminal justice system, the DA, the U.S. Attorney, they need to be looking at this stuff.
I hope they do. Thank you, Bob. Very much. A few more minutes for questions. Maybe the other Bob back in the back.
Why isn't Roy Cooper looking into this?
Well, it's the function of our state law. He doesn't prosecute crimes in North Carolina. It's, some DAs in some states do, but the district attorneys prosecute crimes. They can call on the attorney general for help. They used to be able to call on the attorney general for the SBI, but they can't do that anymore. They called on the SBI was actually involved in investigating this industry, and then they moved it in the budget. I think they transferred it from the attorney general's office to the governor's office. Whoa! So now where's the SBI? They have stopped investigating this. As soon as the Board of Elections gave a clean bill of health, they stopped their investigation.
I saw the name of a gentleman who is a registered lobbyist on 2 of those lists.
Do you want to call his name? Out him? Is he a lobbyist at the time?
And now, I believe.
Okay, well that's cool. Let's get him. Let's
Paula should come see Bob after the lunch. David, you.
Bob, would you have any notion as to what your chances are of having Freeman take the case?
I think she's an elected official, and I hope that she will respect the public opinion that says that she ought to take this case and look at it seriously. And the facts of the case need to speak for themselves. But it is a major investment of resources for a district attorney's office to go after this kind of stuff. So I do think it's a I hope it will be something that she puts.
But your facts do support that.
Yes. And I think that she is interested in it. I mean, she expressed that interest in the press.
Right, she did.
So I do think, and if any of you have ways to speak with her, encourage her.
Just don't make it via campaign contribution.
Yeah. I hear you. The merits of the case will be nice.
My colleague Sarah Vesca.
Have you looked, I wonder if any of this money's flowing to the sheriff's races, just given that the sheriffs traditionally have been opposed to the vote.
Yeah.
That any of this money's gotten through to kind of encourage.
It has, traditionally it has gone to sheriffs, and it's, that's very difficult because we don't have those records in any kind of electronic form. They're filed county by county as elected officials in the counties, and it's paper. So it's very difficult. But there have been sheriffs busted in North Carolina for big scandals because they were on the tape with this industry, this particular industry. Yeah, it's a very corrupting role.
Other questions? Well, we hope y'all will continue to pay close attention to this issue. I hope you saw the News and Observer's lead editorial yesterday on this topic, saying that they need to heed Bob's call for further investigations. It's a subject that obviously bears watching, and we hope you'll have lots to watch in the weeks and months ahead.
I do have a couple. I have a few of the packets with the letter to the U.S. Attorney and the District Attorney and the press release, and this is a 2-page also on our website. The 25 years of speaking truth to power, just to kind of help straighten out the media sometimes that want to say, oh, well, they're just a Democratic Party front group. We've actually filed complaints against the Democratic Party multiple times. So anyway, you're welcome to take those where they land.
Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next month.